I'm here with Suz. Suz, welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and introduce yourself?
Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me. I am Suz Chadwick. I am a business and branding and personal brand coach for mainly women, but not only. And I live in Melbourne, Australia. You can probably tell by the accent. But I've had my business for around about 10 years. Before starting my own business, I ran a brand agency. And before that, I was in sales and recruitment for one of the big four consulting firms. So I've had a bit of a range of things that I've done, but I think the one thing that I have always been passionate about and focused on, even when I didn't know what it was, is personal branding. I feel like even when I was in my 20s and in my corporate job, I was a bit of I was like, I know I need to build my brand in this organization if I want to continue to go up the ranks as I really wanted to. And so it's always been something that probably even intuitively I've understood the power of.
And I'm sure you can connect that journey with those who are just getting into personal branding and how that experience and those different experiences that you have connect with helping people to build their brand online.
I just think that we're in a time now where it's kind of essential. We've seen all of the videos, etc., where, say, Virgin will have 200,000 followers, but Rich and Branson's got like 10 million or whatever. The organization has a following, but it's usually the leader who has something to say, who is the face of the brand that people really connect with. If you're in business today, it's really important to understand the dynamics of brand, your business brand versus your personal brand, and how you're really building that connection with your audience. Because at the end of the day, that's who we want to connect with. Whilst you might be an Apple or an Android person, or you might be a Coke or a Pepsi person, whatever it is, we want to connect more with people rather than the brand itself.
Are there things that the brands, the organizational brands are doing that people should be doing too, that people maybe do better than these organizational brands?
I think that when it comes to personal brands, the realness, and obviously you talk all about storytelling, I think that people do storytelling really well. Like it's their personal experience, it's their origin story. Like I kind of talk about 4 main stories amongst all the other things. And the first one is kind of your origin story. So it's like where you came from, how you got there, all of the bits and pieces that we really connect with. So if somebody tells me that they're from Australia or they lived in London or, they really love soccer or whatever it is, I will find things where I'm like, oh, I can connect with you on that. And so our origin stories, I think when you've got a personal brand, that's what people really love. We've got our lessons learned that we can share that I don't know that companies can really share it, but as people, we can share it. And I think that helps us to be really relatable. So maybe the failures that we've had. I love listening to founder stories, where they failed and then they triumphed. And it's the whole hero's journey that we love. And so whilst Airbnb is a great example, they've got a great story. It's really the founder's story that we're listening to, not so much Airbnb's story. And then the other thing I love is client stories. Like I want to know how you're good at what you do. I think that when we share how we work with our clients and what we do, we're building authority. And then I also think that when we share other people's stories, once again, it can be relatable for others. So if you tell me a Brené Brown story, you and I are now best friends. So I think that when we're a personal brand, it's about connection, it's about relatability, it's about what can I find out about you that makes me feel like we can now be friends. And we're constantly searching for that because we're built for community. We're built for connection. And so when you're in business, I think sometimes we focus too hard on the product and we miss the opportunity to remember that we're built for connection and how can we connect better with our customers, our audience, the people who want to be part of our world.
And you just took us through some amazing storytelling formats that can really help to supercharge this personal branding journey. Can you give us some insights into each of those that you mentioned, starting with that origin story?
When I work with clients, this is really interesting. I'll say to a client, tell me your origin story. And they'll say, So that I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and, ta-da kind of thing. And I did it a little bit as well when we first started, because I was like, I'm not sure, like, should I give you the long version or should I give you the short version? And so if I was standing on a stage, if I was sharing this on socials, if I was giving you the longer version, then I'm going to tell you about the fact that I was in recruitment for a long time. And then one day we ended up needing to recruit 100 consultants for Deloitte in London across Europe. And they brought in a branding agency. And I didn't know anything about branding, Ryan. Like, I had never really been exposed to it in this way. But this brand agency came in, and all of a sudden we were looking at strategies around brand activations and building communities online and social media. And this was like 2004. So LinkedIn and Facebook and all that had really only just been around. And we were looking at now this exciting way of connecting with people. And so we started to use all of these communities and connection points to attract hundreds and hundreds of consultants through newspaper and billboard ads and socials. And for me, it was a real aha moment of, this is what I want to do. It's almost like an end scene. Yeah, that's like part of my story where I can tell you that I was in sales and then I did this and then I did that. But if I actually go into what happened, what was the aha moment for me? What was the realization? What's the story around it? Then that's a lot more captivating than if I just tell you what I did first, then what I did second, then what I did third. I think that when we're looking at our origin stories, the thing that I always encourage clients to do is give me the emotion of the moment that you changed direction or you had an aha moment that made the decision for you as to what you did next. For me, I could say, I was in sales and then this is what happened that then got me into branding. And then from there, this is what happened. This is the story. This was the emotion. This was the aha moment that then got me into my own business. And so I can take people on the journey, but rather than just taking them from one thing to another, I'm really showing them an insight into how I felt, what I thought, what I wanted, what was my desire, and then how I did it. And when we can tell people that, our origin story really comes to life. And I also think that as a speaker for myself, I might cherry pick moments of my origin story that are relevant for my audience. So I may not always tell my whole origin story, but I might tell one element of my origin story that's really relevant for my audience at the time and go deep on that particular element of my origin story.
And where do you see people really struggling with telling their origin story? Because you're working with a lot of different kinds of clients with a lot of different backgrounds. So I imagine you might see some things that are common themes for struggle.
They haven't thought about what they went through at the time, and they haven't practiced telling that story. And so if you're not somebody who commonly speaks or shares stories, I do think that it's something that you've got to learn to do well. For me, as I started debating when I was 16, so I had to really convince the audience. I had to share my persuasive arguments. I had to tell them stories about why this is going to be so incredible for them to believe that, whether I believed it or not at the time, for me to believe. And so I think that if you want to become a good storyteller and you want to share your origin story in a powerful way, you've got to practice it. Michael Margolis, who is very famous for storytelling, years ago, I'm talking like 7 years ago, I did a workshop with him in Melbourne. And he did this exercise where you pair up with somebody and you've got 3 minutes to tell your story. And so you tell your story and then the person who's just listened tells you what they heard. Like, what were the main things that they remember? What did they hear? What did they want to hear more about? What really piqued their interest? And then they give you that feedback and now you've got to retell your story in a minute. And I do this in personal branding workshops with my clients as well. And the reason that you do it is that the more that you share your story, the more you'll see what resonates for people. And then you can start to hone your story a bit more. One of the other things Michael says is your story can only be honed, or your message can only be honed when it's witnessed. And I've never forgotten that. I think it's really powerful. It's only when we tell our stories, it's only when we share our message that we can really know what people are going to connect with and they're going to love and they're going to like tell me more about that. If you're wanting to become a good storyteller, if you're wanting to share your origin story, become a good speaker, you've got to be prepared. I always say to suck a bit first. You've got to kind of go through the river of misery where you're like, okay, maybe I didn't tell it as well. Maybe I could tell it better. And then you figure out which points you can kind of dive a bit deeper into. The action from this is write down your story, really look at why you made your decisions, what were the emotions that you went through, and then how do you tell that story well and practice it, get feedback, and then like practice it again based on the feedback.
Such great advice for not only personal branding and making stories that matter and that will help to advance your brand, but also for the stage too, and for the podcast and for these other methods that we talk about. You also mentioned the idea of lessons learned.
Yeah, I think that sometimes business owners and people in general, we don't want to show our vulnerabilities too much. We don't want to tell people that we failed, that we didn't do it very well, because that can be embarrassing sometimes. And we've all heard the saying, share the scar, not the scab. Like once you've really processed the learning and you can look back on it and you can say that was a hard time, but I know what I can share from it. I think that lessons learned really increase your credibility and your relatability. And the reason is that if you failed and now I can see that you succeeded at this particular thing, then I can see myself in you. So I'm failing at this now, but if you've succeeded and you're telling me how you succeeded and the lessons you learned from the failure, then you now give me hope. And we want to follow people who have been where we've been before and they've now triumphed. So I'm going to follow you because you're going to teach me how you went from the failure that I'm in to the triumph that you're experiencing now. And that's why we love the hero's journey. That's why all movies are based on the hero's journey. When we talk about lessons learned, I think that is a really essential part of our connection to our audience as well. I sometimes do on my podcast, the fail files, where I'm like, I totally failed at this. Let me tell you a time where I really sucked. It was bad. I thought it was going to be great. And, I lost $30,000 or I, bombed on the stage or I forgot what I was going to say or whatever it is. Yeah. I think that one way to be able to look at a lot of the things that we're talking about is what do I want to be known for? And then what are the stories that I can tell within that? So, for example, if I want to be known for somebody that helps you to become more profitable and manage your money, let me tell you all the times I've managed my money really badly and all of the problems that I had and the money I lost and the failures. And then let me tell you about how I got out of it. And I think that's a much more interesting story than let me tell you about all the amazing things that I've done and how I've never failed and I'm always great. Like nobody wants to hear that all the time. So I think it's important to think about what have been really big lessons in your life and how can you share that in relation to whatever it is you're trying to communicate to your audience.
This idea of perfection, I think sometimes holds people back, right? So you're speaking directly to one of those things that I think that a lot of people, especially with posting on social media, struggle with, which is imposter syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. Imposter syndrome is such an interesting one. And I'll tell you why, because I actually think that imposter syndrome can be healthy. All it's telling me is that maybe there's something new I need to learn and something new I want to learn. When somebody gets on stage, it's all about the thought. So your body is going to have a reaction. Your body, you're going to feel the nervous energy, you're going to have the adrenaline, and your thought is either going to be, I'm totally going to bomb, I'm so nervous, this is going to be awful. Or your thought is, this is so exciting, this is going to be amazing, like I've got the nervous energy going, I'm going to bring it on the stage. The reaction in our body is the same, but the thought are two different things. And I think imposter syndrome is the same as this. So what happens is that I get into a situation and my feeling in my body is, oh my gosh, like, can I do this? I don't know if I can do this. Yeah. What if I get found out is the thought that we have. I would encourage you when it comes to imposter syndrome and you're in a situation, Number one, I don't need to know everything. Like, I'm not here to be an expert. I'm here to be a contributor. Somebody said that a long time ago and it's never left me. And also, if I get into a situation where I feel like I don't know enough, there's two things. Number one, I know enough to be here. And I think it's a self-belief element. And I think it's a self-confidence element as well. If I don't, that's okay, because I might learn something here as well. So I think that when we look at imposter syndrome, there's been so much negativity around it. And I would really love to flip that script and say, when I feel like an imposter, why do I feel like an imposter? Is it true? Because sometimes even people who are the most experienced, experts in their field, experience imposter syndrome. So we have to ask ourselves, is this thought I'm having actually true? If somebody says to me, Suz, can you coach women who do consulting to build personal brands? And I think, oh, I don't know, can I? Well, if I ask myself, have I done it? Yes. Do I have clients that have had good experiences? Yes. So then I have to tell my brain, yes, Suz, you can do this. You don't need to have imposter syndrome. And if there's anything you don't know, you can learn it along the way. We don't need to be experts all the time. So those are my thoughts around imposter syndrome. I'm a big one for flipping the script and understanding that we get to choose the thoughts we have and we get to tell our brain what we are experiencing in the moment and whether it's positive or negative.
Such a powerful thing to be able to help students who might be struggling or your clients who might be struggling to overcome those kinds of things. You also mentioned testimonials and client stories, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I see this on TikTok all the time. I love TikTok, but I think that people who share stories where they might share how they've helped a client to achieve a certain goal. This was the problem that either you might be experiencing, if you're experiencing the fact that you're not able to attract clients the way that you want. I had a client and this is what she was experiencing and this is what happened. And then once we tweaked this one thing, she was able to achieve this goal or this outcome. We sometimes miss the opportunity to share our client stories, obviously without naming them if that's not something that you need to be doing, but just showcasing how you help your clients, what their results were, how they felt in the moment, the emotion that they went through, the aha moment. I feel like there's a common thing here, either with our origin stories or with the lessons learned. It's what were we experiencing? What was the aha moment? How did we feel about it? And then what happened? And I feel like you can do that with your origin story, with your lessons learned, with your client stories. If you follow that format, then it can really help people to be like, yes, I'm experiencing that. And so if I'm experiencing that and you've helped clients to achieve that, then you're probably somebody that I should be following or checking out or listening more to. Mixing that in, I think, is something that is really worth doing. And something I love to teach clients is what I call story selling, which you've probably heard as well. I call it the drive-by offer, story selling, where I might say something like, so I was working with a client, this was the problem. And then once we worked together and they had the aha moment, she was able to achieve this goal, which is something that I teach my clients in this product that I have. And then I keep going. Yeah. So all in one, I've sort of told you who I am, what I do, the problem I solve, the results my client gets, and where you can work with me. And I've done it in a very non-salesy, non-kind of buy my thing kind of way. Once again, practicing and perfecting that, not perfecting it, making it better, getting comfortable with it can really help you to demonstrate your authority.
That kind of thinking is going to help so many people. We think like heart, head, hands. How do I help? How do I tell this story without being salesy? I think storytelling is one of the best ways in, because we tend to get in our own heads sometimes whenever people are coming at us. But with a story, we're really lowering our defense shields and we're being more receptive and just being more authentic human beings. You're just two humans connecting to actually solve a problem, right?
Yeah. And I mean, as you would know, we remember story more than anything else. Yeah. So I could hit you with facts and figures and it'll be interesting, etc. But I think that when we tell a story, that's what people remember. That's what they connect to. And that's what is actually very persuasive when we tell stories well. And I think that there are certain people in the world. Even for me, I love listening to Elizabeth Gilbert or Brené Brown or Shonda Rhimes. I'm just like hours for hours, just keep talking to me. When you can really start to enjoy the process of learning to tell great stories, the benefit is that people love to listen to you.
We're programmed for story, right? That is so true. And it's fun. And once we have our stories and we have our different kinds of stories and we're all ready to get out there and, oh, wait a second, I have all these other things to do. And now I need to post on every social media platform at least 20 times a day. And there's so much advice out there that I think is probably bad advice, right? About having to post everywhere all the time and be omnipresent on all channels. Can you speak a little bit about your philosophy and how you help clients to have a system that works for them?
Yeah, and I think the podcast is an amazing way to do that. Even now, we're trying to get more out of the podcast because that's my evergreen, like my core evergreen piece of content. I do a lot of podcast episodes. I think we're up to episode 341 or something like that. If you can create high value content that can then be repurposed in lots of different ways, then that's obviously going to be a time saver. It means that there's consistency in what you're saying and where people are seeing you. And then it's really up to you where you want to use them. If you're a solo, if it's just you and maybe a VA or something like that, then it's just about being smart with where you think your audience is and posting there. So for example, I've been on Instagram forever. I love it. It's where I connect with my community. It's where I have lots of conversations. LinkedIn, as an ex-recruiter, I have like PTSD from LinkedIn because I had to be on it every single day. So as a business owner now, it's probably not my favorite place to be, but I do know it's very powerful. I love TikTok. And then obviously we've got the podcast. For my VA, I create the podcast and then she creates the videos and some of the content from it. And then she helps me post. I just think you've got to think about where is my ideal client? Where do I want to be and kind of dominate or be very strong on that platform? And then how do I do it in a sustainable way? Because you don't want to be spending all of your time on those things. But I also would say squeeze as much juice out of what you do create as possible. So even now, I say to my VA, go back on old blog posts, grab content from there, methods, models, structures, tips that I've shared before, and then let's keep creating so that we've just got such a huge bank. Just valuing what you've got, I think, is an important thing. I think we're always like, oh, I've got to create something new. I've got to create something new. I'm like, well, do you though? You've probably got quite a lot that you can be continuing to share.
I'm really happy to hear that because I know that's going to take some weight off the shoulders of a lot of people who might be listening. Do you have any other advice for posting this kind of content? Can you take us through that process that you use for your own content and maybe some advice that you can give to your clients?
Yeah, I think there's two things that I would say to you. The first one is when you are building a personal brand, depending on what area you're in, I'm a really big one for thought leadership. So what are the concepts that you've learned or created that are unique to you and continuing to reiterate them? So for me, I talk about my Amplify method, which is around personal branding, or I talk about the, revenue generation roadmap for one of my programs, or I talk about the 7 pillars of thought leadership. And so I think when it comes to your content, really looking at how you package it in a way that is memorable and recognizable is something that is worth doing, because then it kind of organizes your thought leadership and it organizes what you want to be known for in a way that's really digestible for your audience. And then if you continue to refer back to it, you can obviously pull it apart. Like I said before, you don't always share everything in the kitchen sink. You might just share one element of it, but then you refer back to that method or the model or the thought leadership that you've created. So that's one thing. Really think about, how am I creating messaging assets that help me to become known, that I can break down, refer back to, continue to share. It's like Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I love Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. There's those sorts of books where you can always refer back to them and they're known for that. So I try and do that in my content to build my personal brand. The second thing that I would say is to really look at what's happening at the moment. So people say to me, I don't know what to share. I'm like, I shared this morning on my stories a concept that came from a conversation with a group of clients yesterday. And then I kind of built it out. So when I am in content creation mode, number one, I always block out usually 8:30 to 9:30 every single morning in my diary for content creation. And I might only use 15 minutes of that or 20 minutes of that where I might create some stories and a reel, etc. But it's a habit. And when it becomes a habit, it becomes so much easier. Because I think when people are like, how do I become consistent? I don't know how to be consistent, or I don't know what to create. I'm like, okay, block some time out, start to learn what it is that you can create. For me, I'm always referring to conversations I had last week or a problem that a client's having right now. Like literally content's just falling into my lap through the conversations that I'm having. I might go tomorrow and talk about the fact that I was on a podcast and we talked about storytelling and do you really think that you've mastered storytelling? Let's talk about it. So I'm not trying to find content. Content is something I already have. It's a story I already have available to me and it's just communicating it. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate content. I'm like, just tell a story about something that's relevant to you and your audience that you think could be helpful. That's it. Once again, it's kind of the thought that we have about it. And let's not make it harder than it needs to be.
You just gave so many reasons for people to look you up on their favorite platform of choice and find you. And we will be sure to get that information from you before this is over. But you also said something about 7 pillars of thought leadership. And I went, that is great for an audience that's interested in personal branding to better understand.
This is something that I created years ago and I go back to it all the time. So I'll give you the 7 pillars and we can touch on each of them. So the first pillar is your beliefs. So what are your core beliefs? What is it that you're like, what's the hill that you're willing to die on is what is the thing that I say. So my belief is that you need to build a personal brand in order to stand out in the market. I have other beliefs as well around how I grew up and my parents and, you know, maybe religion or politics, etc. You decide what goes into your belief box and what stays out of it. It's totally up to you. But you've got to remember that we connect with people based on beliefs, common beliefs as well. The second thing is collective research. That is what I learned from Brené Brown or Simon Sinek or whoever else that I love to listen to. Marty Neumeier is the godfather of branding. So I love his books, The Brand Flip and The Brand Gap. And I talk about that a lot. What that does is that it allows my audience to know that I'm not really insular in my thinking, but that I've looked at other people and what they think, their research, people who have been around for a long time. And sometimes it's stuff that I agree with and stuff I don't agree with. And I think that's important as well. Yeah, it's not always about what I think and what you need to believe, but it's about sharing interesting information that's relevant to you and your audience that could cover different aspects or different thinking around it. Your third pillar is your life experiences. So I think this is really great with stories as well, where I might have a particular thing that I want to share with you around, you know, like I said, money management. And so now I'm going to share some life experiences with you that could help. If we talk about, let's talk about money management for a second, then we could say my beliefs around money and the fact that my parents told me that money doesn't grow on trees and the fact that I grew up in a home where we didn't always have a lot of things. And so what's my beliefs around that? What's my collective research around what other people say about money? What's my life experiences around money, even when I was in my 20s and when I was growing up? My language lexicon is another part of my thought leadership. And this is language that you become known for. It could be things that you put together. It could be things that you make up. Sometimes we make up words that we become known for. Marie Forleo's was everything's figure-outable. It's not actually a real word, but it's something that is part of her personal brand. My clients love that I talk about procrastinating. I'm like, stop procrastinating, stop procrastinating. We need to get on with it. So that's become part of my brand language lexicon. Your isms as well. What are the things that you talk about all the time that just become part of what it is that you're building and creating and sharing. And then the last two are your assets and your platforms. What are the assets that you're building and that you're known for? And so, for example, Amy Porterfield could be Digital Course Academy. That's one of her assets. It's part of her thought leadership. It's a way that she's monetized it, and it's part of her brand. That's what she's known for, the platforms that they dominate and they are on, and you know that you can find them there. It's really interesting. She's big on Instagram, but she's not really on TikTok or YouTube or even LinkedIn. And so it's also, what is the platform that you're using to share your thought leadership? So those are the 7 pillars that if you were to dive deep into them and really work out what it is that you want each of those to be. And the way that you can do it, you could even say, like I did at the beginning, if I take this through the money content theme, if I take it through the personal brand content theme, if I take it through the mindset content theme, then I would have different things that I would talk about in each of that. What's my beliefs around mindset? What's my collective research around mindset? What's my life experiences around mindset? That's something that you can do with the different topics that you talk about, your content pillars, your content themes, the things you want to be known for. Take it through the 7 pillars and see what comes out.
Such an powerful framework for people who want to get better at this. Where do they struggle? Where do your clients hit walls here? Because I imagine there are a lot of opportunities for stumbling or hitting walls, even with such a great roadmap.
I think going back to, people don't see the value in what they already do and what they already have. So if I say to somebody, like, what are your life experiences around this particular topic? Then they'll be like, I don't know. And I really have to dig. It's like pulling teeth sometimes, where it's, well, what happened at this stage in your life? Or what's a memory? Like, if you sit and think about it, what's a memory that you have about that particular topic? What's a lesson that you learnt about that particular topic? What is something that if you were standing in front of 300 of your ideal clients and you were on a stage and you wanted to share your thinking around it, what are the things that you would say? So I have a lot of questions that I ask clients, because I think a lot of times they get stuck in that, oh, I don't know, like I wouldn't have a clue what that is. And I think it's only when we take the time to ask ourselves the questions, dig back into the recesses of our mind and take a look at, what were the books that really influenced you? Because then that becomes collective research. Who are the people that you listen to where you're quoting them, or you're taking what they've shared and you're incorporating it into how you teach clients? Brooke Castillo from the Life Coaching School, I love her model. I always talk about the model, but I learned that from her. It's really taking the time for us to dig in a bit. And I think that, I'm going to show my age here, Ryan, but I think that we're in a time where everything moves so fast and we're just in this role culture that sometimes you've got to stop and you've got to dig a bit deeper into why you think what you think, where those beliefs and stories have come from, how you've filtered them, which becomes your language lexicon and your isms, how you are monetizing it through the assets. So how are you teaching what it is that you believe, you've experienced, you've learnt? And then where are you sharing that? So I think that if you look at it in that way, and once again, you stop, you spend the time, you go deep, then you'll figure them out. But that's where people, I think, miss the mark. They don't stop and spend the time.
It seems like that there's an advantage there to taking a breath. Whenever you take a breath and you assess, I imagine you think about things that you wouldn't necessarily think about, right? You're able to gain insights to where you spent your time wisely or maybe unwisely. You take us through how you actually build your day or your week that is relevant for personal branding and relevant for people who want to grow that thought leadership. You already mentioned that you have this great habit for diary processing. Do you have other habits that really help you to set yourself apart in the marketplace?
Oh my gosh, Ryan, you're just speaking my language now. I love this question. I like things to be organized. It's one of the things I always say. One of my gifts is helping my clients organize their business so that it doesn't feel like a mess and they know what they're doing. And so for me, if I was to give you a little bit of background on my week, is that I always block out 8:30 to 9:30 for content creation. I normally don't take clients before 9:30 in the morning as well. I've got kids, they go off to school, etc. But about a year ago, I found myself thinking, oh, like, all right, I posted tick the box. I was just in a bit of a space like that. And then at the end of last year, I really had to have a sit down with myself and have a good talking to. And I kind of pull myself out of that. I created the thought that when I share content, it brings clients. What that does is that it really energized the process for me. Number one, I was like, I want to have more fun with my content. And Suz, when you create great content that you love, because I always say to clients, the energy you put out is the energy you get back. So if I'm putting out energy that's like, tick the box, I did the thing, that's probably the energy that my clients and my audience are going to get if that's how I'm creating. So I really had to change the thought of when I create content that I love and that I enjoy and that I feel energized by, that creates clients for me. And it absolutely does. I know that that happens. Then I was like, all right, I need to create a practice and block it in my diary. 8:30 to 9:30, I do content creation. So that could be recording a podcast. It could be doing a reel. It could be getting on stories. It could also just be going and engaging with other people too. So that's kind of what I do in that time. And then throughout my week, my Monday morning is a CEO morning. I also believe that you have to treat your business like your best client. If you want your business to grow, then you've got to invest strategic thinking time in order for you to be able to see what's happening, assess, adjust, work with your team, and be very deliberate in the actions that you take. So I've had a CEO morning for a very long time now, years, which I love. And the other thing around CEO time is don't give yourself the dregs. Don't give yourself, like, when you're tired, it's the end of the week, you might have an hour free and then you give yourself that. Give yourself your best time of the week and the best time of the day. So Monday mornings, I'm like raring to go. And so I give myself that time. And then for the rest of the week, it's really divided between client time. And then I also have things like we put out a podcast, minimum one episode every week. So that's not, will I put it out? It's when it goes out. I'm sure you're probably the same. And I think that's the other thing is that in business, my clients laugh at me because I'm like, okay, we are CEOs. We are not emotional toddlers. So I don't do things when I feel like doing it. I do things that I know are going to move my business forward. I think also having that attitude means that I do my finances every week. I send out the invoices every week. I have my CEO morning every week. I get my content out like religiously every single day. And then we measure and we see what's happening in the business. So as far as running the business, that works really well for me. Having that content schedule builds my personal brand. Like we know that we get over 30% of our clients from the podcast. I know why I'm doing it. I know the benefits of it, and I know the results that I get from it. And I think that people lose motivation a lot of times because they're not measuring what's working. They're not committing to the consistency. They're not putting in the time and the effort and the pause to actually stop and think, is this working? Or am I just adding to the noise? Are people connecting with this? So that's how I run my week. That's how I think about things. I'm a big one for thought management as well. So I think our brains can run riot if we let it. And so I'm very intentional. I teach my kids this. You get to choose what you think. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't, it's just like a muscle. You've just got to keep chipping away at it. So if you suffer from imposter syndrome, if you're like, oh, Suz, I'm just not that organized, like I couldn't be that structured, that's just a thought. It's not a reality. You could build the muscle and you could have a CEO day morning every week. You could do content like every day for 15 minutes, even 15 minutes. We've really got to look at what's working for us and what's not working for us. And also when it comes to building my personal brand, I do ask myself, what have I shared today that helps me be seen as a thought leader? Like, am I sharing the way that I'm thinking, why I'm thinking that, and how that helps my clients?
You mentioned that you get about 30% of your clients from the podcasting activity. I'd like insights into the podcasting, but I also want to know about this lead generation and where the other clients come from, if not podcasting.
So basically, every time somebody buys from us, there's a question in the cart, like, where did you hear about us? Usually, and we need to do it for the last 12 months, but we've done it for the last couple of years, and it's been about 30 to 35% have come from the podcast. About 30% comes from, 20% comes from social media. About 30% comes from when I speak. So as a speaker, when I'm at events, I always get clients, which is amazing. And then we've also got referrals. So our source of client are those things, and we're always checking in on it. So with the podcast, what happens usually is, number one, people might find me organically through the podcast. So they might be searching on branding, mindset, marketing, whatever it is. What I found is I get a lot of clients who are like, I've just discovered you. I've just been listening to you for the last 4 hours. How do I work with you? And that's amazing. From a motivation perspective, I'm like, now, if I'm honest, we've only just started. We're putting out like 3 episodes a week now. We've only just started doing that. They're a lot shorter. So I've always been a very long form podcaster. I find it hard to be short form, if I'm honest, because I've got a lot to say, Ryan. I've got a lot to say. Now we've tried to put out more content, but not as long form. And I'm seeing how that's going, because everything's a test. That's how we're working on the podcast. And you'll appreciate this. And if anybody's a podcaster, they'll appreciate this. Omar, who has the $100 MBA podcast, he's a biz friend of mine here in Australia. And he shared a little while ago that they get 2 million downloads a month. Yeah. Your face, Ryan, tells me. Yeah. And so obviously I was like, well, I have to know, how do you do that? I don't get 2 million downloads a month. So I went and I listened to a YouTube interview that Omar was on. And the first thing that the interviewer said was, I feel like I'm really great and consistent with my podcast. I put out a podcast episode every week, but this guy puts me to shame. He puts out an episode every day. So it's a 10-minute, 15-minute episode. And he is very specific, 3 different lead generation strategies, or how to have an upsell. So it's something that's very specific. And it's about a 10 or 15-minute episode. And he used to be a school teacher. So teaching is just in his blood. He's like, I used to do like 5 lectures a day. I used to create curriculums. He's like, so I just leaned into what I was good at. He does batch recordings where he might record, 20 episodes or whatever, and then he's kind of done for the next 3 weeks if he's posting an episode every weekday. So when I heard that, I'm like, I can do that. So I'm not going to do it every day, but we're testing out 3 times a week. And the reason for it isn't just for the downloads, but the theory, the hypothesis, because business is always a test. The hypothesis is that if we currently get 30% of our clients from the podcast, which equates to X number of clients and X number of revenue, if I increase the number of podcasts and I increase the number of downloads, which means that we'll be ranked higher, more people will see us, all the rest of it, then in theory, I should get more clients from the podcast if we increase our activity on the podcast. So I can let you know how that goes, because we're just starting out with it. But that's kind of how I think as well. Let me learn something. Let me test it for myself, and say in 2 months' time, like give it enough time, 2 or 3 months' time, be like, what were our download increases? Did we see an increase in clients? Did we see an increase in revenue? How has this impacted my personal brand? Am I growing my followers? Have we grown our email list? I'm always about quantifiable, but giving things time to be quantifiable as well, not just being like, well, we did it for a week and it didn't work, so that's not worth it.
I can't wait to find out how that test ends, right? I imagine you've done this before and you've had different results. Like you've identified a specific strategy or tactic. You've identified something to change in your business, in your personal brand, or in your actual lead generation strategy. Can you take us through some of the things that have happened in the past that worked for you and where you saw a big return on investment from making those small changes, or maybe big changes?
I'm a big one for being intentional. So for example, I just made a decision that in the last 12 months or so, I wanted to get more PR. Like I wanted to be in more online publications. I wanted to have more website backlinks, those sorts of things. We intentionally then did it research on all of the different publications that we wanted to be on. We pitched to them. They interviewed me. I wrote for them. And we had quite a lot of new, publications that we were in. I wanted to get more speaking gigs. I set the intention, say the intention externally, and I have a reason for that. So I'll say to my audience, right, this year I am going to speak at least 20 events. That's my goal. I'm going to speak at 20 events. I have already 7 booked in. If you know somebody that you think I should connect with who is running events or, conferences that you think Suz would be great at that event, let me know. I will go and follow them up. I had a meeting with one of my clients who's an event manager, and I said to her, right, how do I get into the conference scene, etc.? And she told me. And so then we're like, okay, based on all of this information that we're gathering, we're now telling our community about it. Our community is amazing at coming back to us and saying, Suz, you've got to check this out. They love being super helpful. Now I'm getting much more speaking gigs after the big C, and events here in Australia have not, I guess, been back to where they used to be, but it is getting there. And so it's now being really intentional. What is the goal that I have? What is the thing that I want to achieve? And now what do we need to do in order to achieve that thing? What are the actions that we're going to take? I'm a big believer in the marketing octopus is what I call it. There should be at least 8 different things I'm doing to achieve a certain goal. And after 3 months, 4 of them may not work. And so now we're going to double down on the other 4. But I really want to think outside the box. Sometimes I think we are I want to achieve the goal. Let me just do what I've continued, what I've always done, and maybe something will change. And I'm no, you've got to try 6 other things you've not tried before, or test something new, or ask somebody else what they would do. And so I think that if you've got something that's working really well with you, amazing, stick to it. But if you want to up the ante and you need to think in a different way, then start asking other people for their ideas and brainstorming, and then test things out and see what works and what doesn't.
When you're testing these hypotheses, I'm sure you have some failures too. Can you think of some things that didn't go quite the way you had hoped that they would have gone?
Oh, I'm sure that there's so many. I have launched in the past and not had the success that I want. There's one time that I always tell clients, because I think it's an important failure and lesson that I learned, is that probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I started my mastermind. I called it a certain thing. I had a big webinar. I had loads of people on it. And then I sold one. And this was in November. It was October, November of whatever year it was, 2021, something like that, 2019. Instead of believing that it wasn't good, I just knew that either the message didn't land, I wasn't hitting the right notes with my audience. I didn't really love the name, if I was honest. I think I struggled to name it. And I'm kind of somebody who's I really want to love everything about what I'm selling. This is the best name. It's the best branding. The message is killer. I need to feel that in myself where I'm oh, this is so good. I can't help but share it with you. You've got to come and see this. It's so good. I need to feel that myself. And I don't know that I felt that. So anyway, I did the launch. I didn't get the result that I want. And so I didn't just chuck it in the bin. I kind of took a step back, once again, paused. I wasn't the emotional toddler. I was the CEO. And I assessed what was wrong with what we'd done. And when I say we, that's me, myself, and I. Yeah, it was me, all of my decisions. Over the next 3 months, the November, December, the January, I renamed it. I rejigged the messaging. I interviewed people who had been there to really understand what landed and what didn't land. I rewrote the sales page, and then I ran the webinar again, and we got 10 clients and I made $100,000. I think that this is where, when you're testing something, you've really got to be in the test. And what I mean by that is, when you do something and it doesn't work, don't be oh, well, that obviously doesn't work. The question is, did you need to tweak something? I'm married to a scientist. he's in a lab. And sometimes he comes home and he says, we did the lab test today. We did the experiment and it didn't work. And I'll say to him, well, why? And he said, I think we just need to tweak this thing at the beginning. The rest of it, I think, is fine, but we've got to tweak this one thing. With a webinar, I had to tweak a couple of things and I really had to be all in on it. With other things, like I've got a funnel right now that isn't converting the way that I want. So now we have to go back and say, do we need to tweak the message? Do we need to tweak the emails? Do we need to tweak a heading? What is it that's not working? And I think as a business owner, you don't want to be somebody that just throws everything out at once. You've got to be somebody that's okay with going, well, that sucks. It doesn't work. But what can we shift and change and test to see how we can make it work?
It sounds like personal brand coaching is also business coaching. How do you even distinguish between the two? Because it sounds like you have amazing business coaching ideas that you're embedding in this conversation about personal branding. They're so interrelated, aren't they?
100%. Like at the end of the day, your personal brand is a vehicle to grow your business. Yeah, like it's one of the ways that you connect with your audience and you grow your business. If I'm honest, it's really interesting. I mean, I think that you've got people who grow their personal brand to educate, but at the end of the day, they've got a business in the back end. There's a reason for it. Yeah. So when I think about Brené Brown, and I love her, you'll hear me talk about her all the time. She's very deep. She comes from a social working background. She's very deep in the research and in the depths of it, is what I would say. But she's built a personal brand around it. And there are absolutely products, but she's got programs that are big. She gets paid like $350,000 to speak. Personal branding is part of a business strategy. That's why you've got to have a strategy around your personal brand as well. It's not just like, oh, well, I'll just show up and people will get to know me. It's things like, what's our PR strategy to get our name out there more? How do I get more speaking gigs? Because I know that when I speak, we get at least 20% of our clients through it. Like, it's a strategy. And yes, I love to share my thinking and I love to share my thought leaderships and I love to share my stories and I love to help my clients. It's all mixed in together. But there are certain elements of a personal brand, like a podcast, like a book, like speaking, etc., that means that you can grow your business with a specific intention. It's 100% intertwined. I just think if you want to grow a business and a service-based business as well, in 2024, you have to have a personal brand strategy that is intentional and strategic and that you can measure and see what's working and what's not and how you want to be in that personal brand with your audience.
And you mentioned a book. You mentioned that as a vehicle as well. What made you really take the leap from podcasting to book?
I just felt like I wanted to do like at the time, I just thought I've got so much content and it was definitely strategic around, the assets, like the courses and stuff that I have. But it's really interesting because I do think that a book doesn't have to be the hardest thing that you write. And I'll give you an example is that with my book, which is Play Big, Brand Bold, that I published in 2019, I'm almost finished my second one, but it's taking a while. I took all of my stories and the things that I share when I'm speaking or on the podcast, and I put that in the book. And then I took certain elements of my course, which is Brand Builders Academy, and I put that in the book. And then I looked through my podcast and I grouped some of the things that I talk about and I put that in the book. It's become a really great lead generation for me. But it was at the time, it was really just something I wanted to do for myself. I kind of wanted to hold it in my hand and I wanted to have something that was physical that I created. I think it's interesting. As a service-based business, I'm constantly working with clients and giving them advice and, helping them, but I'm not making anything physically that I can hold in my hand. And so it was something that I really wanted to do. And it's been such a great asset to my business. I think the thing that I would say to clients, especially if you do have a lot of thought leadership and you have created a lot of content, a book is not the hardest thing to put together. But I think it's just making sure that it's, I'm going to say, not dry. Like, I think that if you're going to create a book, still create a book that's really enjoyable for people to read and listen to and consume. And I think that's something that my clients have really enjoyed. They're just like, I got your personality in it. I learned about like when you were a kid, things that you went through, like it was a connection point. Yeah, I think for me at the time back in 2018, it was just something that I felt like I really wanted to do, but it's been a great personal brand asset.
I bet. And it sounds like the journey of doing it was also incredibly instructive for the process and for helping clients more, right? Can you think of some examples where you have helped a client with a specific breakthrough that led to big things, big good things happening in their business or in their personal branding life?
When I think about clients who have built really strong personal brands, the things that we dealt with at the start were them understanding their own story and getting really good at telling it, but then also the confidence to show up, the confidence to see themselves as somebody who can lead. And I think that depending on where you've come from, like whether you've come out of corporate or, you've stayed at home or looked after kids or whatever it is, I think that our inability to sometimes see our own value is one of the biggest barriers to my clients showing up and being like, yes, I can be a speaker. Yes, I can be an author. Yes, I can see myself as a personal brand and somebody who has something of value to say. One of the biggest shifts that a number of my clients have had is really working on their self-belief and also their courage. And I always say choose courage over confidence, because if you are somebody that's like, well, it's the whole imposter syndrome thing. Do I know enough? Do I have enough experience? Whatever it is, have I worked with enough clients to be able to do this? I'm just like, yeah, but are you just willing to give it a go? Like, you don't have to ask yourself, am I confident enough? But am I willing to be courageous in this moment? And so one of my clients who is highly experienced, she's a psychologist, been a psychologist for like 20 years, but because she'd worked in therapy 101, now moving into one-to-many, she was just like, well, do I have anything of value to say? And it just kind of blew my mind a little bit, where I was like, of course you do. Like, you've got so much experience in this particular area. Once we sort of worked on, and it's interesting because obviously as a therapist, like I'm helping her with mindset, but the plumber's tap is always leaky, as we say. Once I kind of helped her and worked on that with her, and then we were able to create methods around how she would talk about the things that she knew in a more digestible way for her audience. And then just starting small, just building that confidence and building that courage to show up and be okay to share what you know and allow people to come to you and ask questions, and knowing that you can help them, I think has been a really big shift for her in particular. And now she's like starting a podcast, and she's like, we're looking at whether she writes a book. And I don't think that every asset is essential for every single person. I'll say to somebody, they're like, should I start a podcast? I'm like, do you like to speak? Because I can talk underwater. I'll talk all day long. So I don't have a problem with speaking. So podcast leans into one of my strengths as a speaker. It's not for everybody. So you've really got to think about, are you better as a writer? Are you better on socials? Are you better at long form content? Are you better on a stage? Whatever it is, I think it's just looking at what that looks like. So for her, we've done the self-confidence thing. We've done the method, like what's your method? What are the models? What are the things that you speak about that you want to become known for? When we look at the podcast, how are we going to structure that? What do you want that to look like? What do you want to be talking about? Maybe it's 15-minute episodes once or twice a week. Like, whatever works for you is what we'll do. That is where I'm seeing transformations, is the valuing yourself and being willing to go, I'm actually going to step up to the plate.
And I imagine that fuels you too when you see your clients knocking it out of the park. It's just so much more purpose-driven work, isn't it?
Even yesterday, I shared on social media, one of my clients landed a really big consulting client, which was worth a lot. And it is the best feeling in the world. Watching my clients become more confident, watching my clients land like their dream clients, even whether it's a little thing, whether it's a little step or a big step, I am just here for it all, because I just see that as my job. I remember years ago, like when I first started my business, my vision was to support women to become bold and powerful voices in the world and claim their space with confidence. And that has been my motto every year since I've been in business for 10 years. I see a lot of people, and I have chosen to mainly work with women, but I see a lot of women that devalue themselves. And I see a lot of them who are highly talented, highly skilled, like my psychology client, who just kind of go, but do I have anything worth saying? And I think that that breaks my heart. You're awesome. Like, you're amazing. The things that you say, I'm just like, wow, you've just blown my mind. But they don't really, they're like, oh, well, I say that all the time. So it's kind of the curse of knowledge as well. The things that we know really, really well, the things that we talk about every single day, we just assume that everybody knows that, and they don't. Like, if you're listening to this and you think that people know what you talk about, they don't. When we don't share our expertise, our knowledge, our stories, our experiences, what we've learnt, how we think, there are people out there who are literally just waiting. And this is another thought that I have. There are people who are waiting to learn how to step into being that bold voice. There are people who want to build their personal brand and they don't know how to. There are people who are wanting to create this business, or they're wanting to work with a particular type of client and they just don't know the path to do it. By me not sharing it, I'm missing the opportunity to help them to do it. And you don't need to be the number one. You just need to be the helper in your community and in your space, and be the person that your audience wants to work with. You're the movement maker. I think that if we can just focus in on our clients and get out of the comparison of, well, I'm not as big as them and I don't earn as much as them and I don't have as many followers as them. I think that's the biggest killer, is comparison. It is 100% the thief of joy. I shared something on Instagram the other day and somebody left a comment and it was about money management. And she said, I don't look at my money and I don't manage my money because I'm always disappointed that it's not as much as this other person. Once again, that breaks my heart. I'm just like, what? Whatever you're doing, somebody else is looking at and going, oh my gosh, look at, and this person's got like 100,000 followers on Instagram. Kind of really gets me. So that's my mission. That's my goal, is to help women get out of their own way so that they can be the bold voice and create the community, have the connection, and be the movement maker that they want to be.
Noble goal with huge purpose payoff whenever you're seeing your clients succeed like this. I know you've mentioned sources of inspiration already. You talked about Brené Brown. You've talked about these other people who really are luminaries. Can you speak to other examples of where we might go to learn more about personal branding specifically?
Yeah, so I think that there's two things. Chris Do, he talks about personal branding a lot. Also, Marty Neumeier, he talks about branding, but I think that there's absolutely a connection and relation there. I don't look always for people who talk about personal branding. I look to people who have big personal brands, and then I like dissect that. So I'm like, why do they have a big personal brand? Why are they somebody that I'm always coming back to? What is it about what they do, how they speak, the things that they share that I can learn from? So for example, Alex Hormozi, I have been, I'm not going to say struggling, but battling with the thinking around having fun in my personal brand, because I enjoy having fun. But then I look at Layla Hormozi and I respect her so much. And it's like, do I want to do a dancing reel, or do I want to share really like top-notch content that shows my expertise but really helps my clients? And so that's something I think that's really interesting right now, even for me, as far as how I'm building my personal brand. How do I want my personal brand to be? What am I learning from the people who I really respect and admire? Because I'm like, Layla Hormozi's not doing any dancing reels, that's for sure. When you're wanting to learn about personal brand, I would really encourage you, Chris Do's a great person to listen to, but really look at people and ask yourself, and this is a question I love to ask generally about brands, is that, as Marty Neumeier says, brand is the emotional connection that you have with your audience. Why do people line up around the block for 3 days for an Apple product when they've already probably got the latest one that's out? Why do people flock to see Stephen Bartlett, there were thousands and thousands of people that came here in Melbourne when he spoke. The auditorium was massive and it was packed. And so I asked myself, what is it about him that makes his personal brand so powerful? He's even said that it was when he did the podcast and he brought all the experts on, which is really kind of like collaboration, personal brand growth through collaboration and association. Once he started getting really big names on the podcast, and obviously his podcast is amazing, like the quality of it is very, very good. I love it. But once again, I stepped back and I asked myself, why? Like, what is it about him? Is it his personality? Is it the fact that he's associated with so many really highly skilled and incredible and interesting people? Brené Brown, she's got a great personal brand because she's a great storyteller and she's got the collective research. I know that what she talks about is grounded in science and things of substance. And so I also think that personal brands are very connected to our values. Branding in itself, we buy what we want to be, do, and have. The brands that we buy fulfill our identity. And I think that when you are building a personal brand, you've also got to ask yourself, what is the identity of the person who really likes me? Yeah, the person who comes back and listens to the podcast every week, the person who buys my course, the person who comes when I speak, whatever it is, what is it about me that they want to see in themselves? What is it about me that helps them to learn, grow, create, connect, whatever it is? And I think it's good to understand that about yourself as well when it comes to your personal brand. So by understanding what attracts you to other people's personal brands, so Brené Brown, like my brand archetype is the sage and the magician. So if you've ever done a brand archetype, that's something you can do. So the sage is the wise person, like the expertise, the substance, that's really important to me. And then the magician is what's possible, creating a sense of what's possible, the magic, the transformation for your clients. Those are two things that when clients come to me, those are things that they say. You used to work for a Big Four consulting firm. You built a global consulting business. You've now had your business for 10 years. The expertise is what they're wanting, but they also love the fact that I love to have a laugh. I love to joke around. I tell them that it's possible for them, and I show them how it's possible for them, that they can have the transformation. When we listen to our clients and why they come to us and what they want more of, I think it helps us to build our personal brand, once again, in a very intentional way where we can hone in on those things, because your message can only be honed when it's witnessed. And I'm going to say the same for your personal brand. Your personal brand can only be honed when it's witnessed. So listen, be somebody who listens to what it is your audience love about you, understand what really attracts you and magnetizes you to other people, and then be intentional with how you craft and build a strategy around building your personal brand.
So we have values, we have identity, we have speaking to that audience, we have listening to the audience. Are there key takeaways from the things that you just said that are more important, that you want people to really remember? These are the ones that you really want them to take home.
When I speak on stage, I always say this: if you take nothing else away from away from this, the things that I would like you to take away, to work on the value that you see in yourself, whether that's crafting your stories, going back over them, really understanding why people love you. And some people really struggle with that. They're like, no, like that's so awkward for me to even think about. But your clients will tell you why they came to you. Your clients will tell you why they love you. And you've got to take that as one of the building blocks for your personal brand. So you've got what you want to be known for and all the pillars that we talked about. And then really think about, why do my clients love me and how do I amplify that in a bigger way to not only grow my brand, but to connect on a deeper level with the people who really resonate for me? And how do I really bring more of myself through my failures, through my stories, through my successes, through my authority, through the things that I help my clients do? I think that when we spend the time in that, I think it makes our personal brand, and obviously because it's one of my values, like it makes it more substantial. a lot of times today, and it's a bit of a generalization, but I know that I crave substance, and I think people with substance rise to the top.
If you have that substance, like Suz has, you too can rise to the top. I think that that's really great advice to help people who are struggling with what their offer is or what their identity is for their personal brand or who to talk to or how to help clients even on the business side of it. Suz, you shared so many amazing things here. I am so excited by the impacts that I know people will have from taking just a fraction of what we've talked about here today and applying it to their own personal brands. Where can people find you if they want to know more? And please spell things out for our listeners.
So you can obviously go to my website, which is suzchadwick.com. So that's SuzChadwick. And I am Suz Chadwick on all social platforms, but I hang out on Instagram the most. So if you just go to Suz Chadwick on Instagram, you'll find me there as well. Those are the two main places, I would say.
Your website and Instagram, those are your main places. But I remember there was
and
a
then
podcast.
The podcast.
I want to know about the podcast too, please. Yes.
So I've got the Brand Builders Lab because we're always testing. We like a good hypothesis. So you're the Brand Builders Lab podcast on all of the platforms. You'll be able to find me there too. You can binge away.
Excellent. And what was the name of that book too?
It's called Play Big, Brand Bold, and it's hopefully you can't miss it. It's on Amazon as well. So yeah, it's on my website, but if you go to Amazon, you'll be able to find it. And it's also on Audible.
Suz, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your wisdom. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.